So today on episode 86 of the deep dive, I'm going to be talking about that verse in Hebrews that talks about without faith, it's impossible to please God. I think that'll be a cool to dig into. And you're going to start talking more about one of your favorite bands of all time, the Grateful Dead.
Right on. I'm going to drop some groovy knowledge about the Grateful Dead today.
And I'm going to drop some groovy knowledge about faith.
Sounds good.
All right.
I can dig it.
Episode 86.
Here we go, Josh.
You did not seem super excited about the Grateful Dead.
Last week or today?
Today,
No.
just now. You're like, I'm going to talk about.
No, I'm super excited, but I'm not far from waking up.
Okay.
I just kind of I woke up at 6 to go play pickleball. Then I laid back down at 7 to not go play pickleball. And I woke up at 9 to come here to be here at 10.
Okay.
Plus, I have been listening to the Grateful Dead all week, and that puts me in a really calm mood.
All right.
I tell you what, I've smiled a lot this week because of the memories that I have listening to the Dead. One of the things that I realized is that there was a longer period of time in my life that I was really a pseudo Deadhead, or that I really liked listening to the Grateful Dead. It was really somewhat high school on into college, and I had my whole friend group, support group, were Deadheads. Meaning most of us went to college and went to a lot of the Dead shows. That's what our Deadhead was.
What was your appeal to it at the beginning, though? Was it because all your friends were into it?
Well,
or was it? Yeah.
I was introduced to it by Kent, my best bud, Kent. This is his T-shirt, by the way. His wife gave me this one and one that has Jerry Garcia's likeness on the front of it. Whenever I went to Lumberton to do his funeral, his Kent has drawers of Dead shirts, of tie-dye shirts and shirts he's got at concerts and so forth. And this is one of them, so I'm wearing. It's in my regular lineup, but I thought it'd be appropriate to wear it today in honor of him and to talk about the Dead. So he introduced me to the Grateful Dead, and I liked the studio versions of the Dead more than the live versions, and I was an enigma. There wasn't most people that liked the Dead liked the live versions, and I grew to love the live versions, and I grew to love seeing them in concert. It was an experience that, if you're not careful, you can get really sucked into, and it can take over your life. I guess like anything else. And I was fortunate enough to where it was a part of my life for a period of time, but it wasn't that hard to come out of that either.
Yeah.
Because, well, a lot of it was about the people I was around. And whenever I graduated college and other people graduated, they moved and I moved. So I physically was taken out of that also. I was not just emotionally and spiritually taken away from what the Grateful Dead is, but I was physically taken away. And that was, like anything else, it's easier to put it aside. Not that I even tried. It wasn't a conscious effort. It just... I certainly wouldn't go to a Grateful Dead show by myself, or I wouldn't seek out other, Deadheads around here to go to a Dead show. It was never in my blood that much. It was a part of who I was when I was with the people I was with, whom I loved, and it was a good time. It was something we all had in common. We could travel a little bit with each other, which was fun in itself, and camp out, overnight. in a car, on top of a car, beside a car, in a tent, whatever, in the parking lot of a Dead show, and get up and hang out and go see the music, and then that was pretty cool. Whenever you're early 20s, you could do those things.
Yeah.
Not so much now. I wouldn't want to do that now. You couldn't pay me to do that now. I wouldn't. I'm not sure what it would take. I think Stevie Nicks would have to sing. I think she would have to say, "I'm going to sing to Destry himself," but you got to bring 5,000 of your friends. I don't know if I'd still go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just not that excited about being around a bunch of people anymore. It's just not anything that really
Right.
it repels me more than anything. Back then, it was different. Back then, it was. It's not just me. It was different back then. There wasn't a lot of mass shootings. There wasn't a lot of people. At least in my head, I did not one time think about it not being safe. Mm-hmm. There were serial killers back then, brother. Don't get me wrong. There were certainly a lot of serial killers going around the 70s, 60s. Dahmer and a lot of them were around there. And man, being at a Dead show with people that were so vulnerable, perfect place to. I don't know. Maybe somebody did. I don't know any serial killers that have a documentary that I've seen or have heard of, but that would have been a perfect place for it.
Yeah, I've never cared for a lot of crowds anyway, and that's gotten more pronounced as I've gotten older. But for me, it's not so much, the fear of mass shootings or violence or whatever. It's just I don't like being in an environment where it's always noisy and it's overstimulation and everybody around me is being loud and I don't have room to, breathe or, stretch my arms and legs or stuff like that.
Right.
I just don't care for that. So I don't like going to the mall, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just like quiet.
I do too now.
Yeah.
Back in the day, none of that stuff bothered me. It just didn't. Especially, I mean, if you're with a group of people, that's kind of your bumper. You know what I mean? I was with Kent all the time, unless I was with a girlfriend or something. And if I went with a girlfriend, we were all together with Kent and his wife, or wife to be your girlfriend at the time or whatever. And it was always a group of 5 or 6 or something, and we'd travel together. Him and I went, I think, a couple times by ourselves. But that was I didn't feel hemmed in. I never felt hemmed in or anything like that. Nowadays, even put aside the danger, like you said, I don't know if it's a lack of control. First of all, I just don't trust others that well. I just don't trust I don't trust desperate people, because desperate people will do desperate things to do whatever they want to do or to do whatever they have to do. And the reason I know that is because if I was desperate, I mean, let's face it, if I had to protect Donna, I would protect Donna with anything and everything that I had to do. So if there's somebody who feels, even if that's not reality, if they feel like they're doing that, like they have to do this in order to survive or have to do this in order to protect somebody else, that's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
And being in a crowd of right now, if somebody said, "Hey man, I'll give you free tickets to 3 nights in a row of a Dead show," if they were still around, I would say, "Can I have it and sell it, or can I wouldn't go."
Yeah.
Because of the culture of today, because of the different drugs that are going on today, and because of the desperate people that would be there, stealing your stuff, which people would do. Not that Deadheads did whenever I went, but I mean, if they're hungry, you know what I mean? Right. And there's too many variables that are uncontrollable. It wouldn't pay off. It just wouldn't pay off. What I would get from it would not pay off from the potential harm. That's the truth. But back in the day, that wasn't a care. Yeah. It wasn't even a care in the world. I went to Richmond with Kent. I went to Meriwether Post Pavilion, Maryland, 3 nights in a row. I went to Charlotte, I think 2 nights in a row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And gosh, there were some other places too. Maybe not Fayetteville, maybe Raleigh. Went to Raleigh also, and one more. So I think there were 6 to 8 shows that I saw. And we talked last week, if you haven't seen that episode 85, I talked about how the first and second show, or the shows that I saw that I was really into it, how I would really, I embraced the culture. And then the last show that I saw, there was, I don't know, 7 to 10 years between the first show and the last show. The last show I saw, I felt like I was hemmed in. I felt like I was around a bunch of homeless people begging for money at a concert. That's what I felt like. And we talked about how the environment itself may not have changed. It was my perception of that same environment, how that changed. And Bob Weir, I watched a documentary called The Other One this week about Bob Weir, the guitarist, rhythm guitarist in the Grateful Dead. And he mentioned how the Deadheads, the people that were that ended up following them around, it just kind of happened. The band didn't have anything to do with it. They just started noticing that they would see the same people in the front rows of their concerts, no matter where they were. And they realized that they started to have a following. And he had a really good take on it, I think. He said that, look, if somebody can do that and it doesn't take away from their family, but it adds to their life, hey, more power to you. But if you're struggling and scraping and stealing and doing things to get from here to there to see anything, he said, I'm not down with that. You know, that's a problem. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. You know, that's exactly the way I felt about it whenever I was there. Because the last show I went to, from the car to the stadium, I had about 5 people come up to me. Hey, man, can I have $10 to get to the next show? Man, what? $10? I had to save money to get to this place, man. And you're going to come up to me and ask for $10? No. The first time somebody done that, I may have done it. I don't know. You know what I mean? I may have given it to them. But the people that Bob Weir was talking about that he respected were the ones that went to the shows, had booths, and they sold things that they made. Because the Grateful Dead never, this is one of the unique things about the Dead, they never copyrighted things. Like the logos and the emblems, they never copyrighted it. As a matter of fact, well, let me say this first. That means that people could create things that had the Grateful Dead logos on it, and they could sell them.
Right.
And it wouldn't, you know what I mean? It's not breaking any laws, right?
Right. So
Bob Weir himself said that man, I appreciate those people that go to the shows. They'll sell something, make $200 and $300, make enough money to put gas in the car and go to the next place. If that's what they're doing, man, I applaud them for that. That's cool. You know, that's great. That's the American way. But to walk around begging for money, that's a whole different thing. Now, those are my words. Walk around begging for money, that's different. We got here in Pensacola, I'm going to sound insensitive. You know why? Because I am insensitive. The people that stand on the corners with signs that nobody can read, but everybody knows what they say, I'm getting really fed up with those guys and those girls. I'm getting real fed up with them because they're getting more aggressive. Let's put aside something for a second, Chris. Let's put aside something, the reason that they're there. Let's just put that aside, okay? Whenever I'm pulling out into a busy highway and I have to look around or back up or go forward to get around somebody holding a sign, that's my last straw. You know what I mean? That's my last straw. And I'll say, I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I don't care what that sign says. If that sign says, I'm flush with cash, If that sign says, I'm in a really good position financially, I don't care what that sign says.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I always get a little bit freaked out when people approach my vehicle without my permission.
The proximity
Yeah.
is enough for that to be the last straw.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I remember I was joking with my wife the other day because sometimes we'll carpool into work. And we pulled up to this intersection, and there's a guy who, as soon as the traffic stops, he starts walking up to vehicles individually. And
That's what I mean by being more aggressive.
yeah. And I joked to my wife, I'm like, hey, roll your window down real quick. She's like, no. I'm like, I'm just kidding. But yeah, they'll like point you out specifically and approach your vehicle.
Yep.
You know, like expecting, oh, I've gotten their attention. They're going to roll their window down. I have no idea what's going to happen if I roll the window down. You know, that's
That happened.
yeah. I've heard too many stories, and that's not a lack of compassion. That's just like I'm uncertain about the situation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You are a sitting duck right there.
Yeah.
I've told y'all how I feel more vulnerable having a convertible going up to us, and I am more. I don't just feel it. I am. I'm absolutely more vulnerable. Even with the top up, I'm more vulnerable, and that.
Yeah.
I'm aware of. At least I'm aware of that. You know what I mean? So whenever I am more aware of what's happening around me, and even whenever before I stop, I'm already looking around, just kind of, we all in this room, we all do that anyway, just because that's what we've been taught to do. And that's what we've taught each other to do. But anyway, let me get back to, I'll go down a rabbit hole.
Yep.
Hey, that's okay. That was me and J-Dell coming here about 45 minutes early this morning.
Right.
And every corner we looked on, there was somebody passed out asleep or somebody, and I went into a tirade with her, and she says, honey. And I was just like, I had to shut my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets to the, I don't know. It gets to the point where you're going, man, if somebody is driving around here thinking they want to move to Pensacola, nobody's going to want to move to Pensacola whenever you're accosted every time you come to a corner. It's almost every corner now.
That was my thought when we came back from Tampa. When I came back that night, I thought I had driven into a dirty dust buster that hadn't been cleaned out in 30 years.
Yes.
What Pensacola reminded me of.
It doesn't help, you know.
Something funny earlier this week. I was at an intersection.
A dirty dust buster. He says, I'm sorry.
So I was sitting at an intersection, and there's a guy sitting on the side of the road at the intersection with his hands up, like holding a sign, except there was no sign there. But yeah, he was holding like in his mind, he was holding something.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, but there was nothing there.
Oh, Josh, roll down the window, hold out your hand with nothing in it.
Oh goodness. Well, we just lost a lot of people.
Take 50
Maybe in
bucks,
his mind there was something written on it. Just depends.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway, this is the Compassionate Podcast. So what I was saying was that the Grateful Dead hasn't, they don't copyright stuff to the point where they were the only band, at least at the time, and that I know of even today. They invite people to come and set up their recording devices and record shows. They did this from the beginning. They said, we love it, man. This is the way we get our music out. That's why today even my buddy Kent had walls of cassettes. Merriweather Post Pavilion 2018. And he would, whenever I'd go visit him, he'd pull out the ones that we went to, and we'd just play them and talk. And it was just, but people back then before the internet would send tapes to people, and at shows they'd bring their tapes and they'd switch to trade. Oh, I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have the third night of this set.
It's like Pokemon cards.
Exactly what it was.
Pogs.
And it was all cassettes. It was all cassettes. But anyway, if you're looking at a video or a picture of the Grateful Dead, what you'll see is poles going up and two long microphones sticking out. And there's probably 75 to 100, 150 people right up in front of the stage or a little bit farther back from the stage in the middle. And they're standing there, and they've got all of their all of their equipment, and it's good to go, man. That's just part of the show.
Yeah,
it's part of it. I always thought that was kind of cool. You know, contrast that with Metallica. They were the first band to say, you can't take my
intellectual property.
My what was it? Intellectual
property.
Yes.
Yeah,
you can't take my intellectual property. Anyway, whatever's right is right. You know, the Grateful Dead were literally hippies playing music.
Yeah,
and fame was a part of that they didn't really appreciate. They didn't appreciate every part of it. They appreciated the money and the women. Bob Weir was the rhythm guitarist, and he was the good-looking one. There were some ugly dudes, man.
Well, that's what I noticed about. That's what I noticed about a lot of the older groups and everything. Like when you go back and look at music videos, like from the '70s and '80s and stuff, early '80s, like what passed for fame back then was totally different than now. Like there was just some ugly dudes all across the board. Back then, but they could play music or they could sing or something like that. But nowadays, like you have to. It's almost like back then, talent is what made you famous and looks was secondary. Now it's almost like looks is what makes you famous, and choreography and pyrotechnics and all this kind of stuff. And voice, it's like, if your voice is bad, we can make it sound good. We have ways of doing that now.
I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. Certainly is more of the way that we look has a lot more to do with it than it did. There's
a whole like genre of YouTube videos or whatever that's like celebrities without autotune, and it'll compare them. Like this is when they're singing this song, and it was digitally mastered and autotune and all this stuff. This is when they were singing it live, an acoustic performance or something like that, and their voice sounds totally different.
Right. I think I ran into that. I ran into while I was doing research this week, I ran into a Instagram page like that, and they would isolate the lyrics and voices, and listen to the Dead, and I was real surprised at how good they sounded, how good Jerry Garcia sounded just with his voice, because there are times where he went flat, real flat, but that was part of the charm. He didn't have the perfect voice. Neither did Bob Weir. Neither did any of them. The live part of their music was the magic.
Right.
And one of the really magical things, and I didn't know this until this week, I knew that it was something different about Jerry Garcia, the lead guitarist, and Bob Weir, the rhythm guitarist, and both of them sang almost the same amount. I knew there was something special about their relationship, not just off the stage, not just on the stage, but off stage also. But on the stage, I learned from Bob Weir, the other one documentary about Bob Weir, that he played his guitar like he learned from, and I don't remember who it was. It was back in the 50s. One of the jazz singers he saw and liked, that jazz singer's pianist complimented the voice by playing off of the voice, and Bob Weir mimicked that on the guitar with Garcia's not voice but Garcia's lead guitar. So if you isolate his rhythm guitar, it sounds odd. It's really odd. He'll play an E all up and down the fret. He'll play a different type of E everywhere. Most people will just stay E, E, E. He'll play 6 different E's, and it all melts together to be one sound. And I thought, man, that takes so much work to do. Whenever you're doing, the Dead's known to do 3.5 hour shows.
Right.
Even longer sometimes, but 3.5, you can expect 3.5 hour shows. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of moving. That's a lot of talent. That's a very unique way of playing a guitar. And I guess I could have figured that out. I don't know enough about the guitar to know, but whenever he verbalized that, I thought that makes total sense because his hand is just never sitting still. Mm-hmm. Bob Weir's hand, he's frequently looking at Jerry, and his hand is moving up and down the neck the whole time, man. It's impressive.
He was a servant to the music.
He was certainly a servant to the music. He actually didn't finish high school. They met, him and Jerry Garcia met whenever they were teaching music at the same place in Palo Alto, California in New Year's Eve, 1964, going into 65. So last week I said they're celebrating something 60 years. It was 60 years since then, whenever they first met. Which I was born in September 64. So whenever I was a baby, they were just, they had just met, and it's one of those kinships that once they met, they never did not know each other. They never didn't hang out. It was always, from the day he died, they were always in each other's lives.
So what would you say is your favorite song?
I like Box of Rain. Mm-hmm. Box of Rain is those of us that don't listen to the Dead or don't know much about the Dead, they probably think it's just anyway, I'll just say this. It's a ballad. Grateful Dead, they do a lot of ballad music, but it's different kind of, it's folksy ballad. Mm-hmm. Country, folksy ballad stuff. I liked Bob Weir's voice better than Jerry Garcia's, but I liked them together the best. And as they grew as musicians, first of all, let me tell you this: Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir are wordsmiths. Whenever you hear them talk, interviewed, you can tell that they both have very high IQs. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that about a lot of the musicians, like Linda Ronstadt. Linda Ronstadt, I guess she had to have a high IQ. Certainly musically, she had a high IQ. But people that are outliers, that stand the test of time, many of them, I believe, are very intelligent. Maybe not book-wise, because if they got into music, chances are they got hooked real early. Yeah. And they put all of their talent towards that.
Well, there's kind of an intelligence that goes beyond what you can learn, too.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
There's like this inherent feeling of music that when someone's really good at it, it's because they have more than just technical knowledge of how to put notes together and what music theory is, but they can kind of feel human emotion in that music. And it's true for not just the people that play an instrument, but like you were saying, someone who's a wordsmith who can communicate an idea in such a poetic way that like no one else would have thought to put it that way, but everybody can understand exactly what he's saying.
That's well put, Josh. That's exactly the way. The whole time I was watching this documentary, and I've seen it before, it was a long time ago, but anytime I hear either one of them, Bob Weir or Jerry Garcia, talk, I'm reminded of how intelligent they are. I forget myself. And we talked about before the economy of language. They both have it. They both have a very economical way of using language.
Right.
And those people can write, in my opinion. They are good writers because you're looking at something and you're feeling what they're saying. That's a talent. That's IQ. That's some kind of IQ,
Yeah.
And I like what you said about not just putting. You can be technically good, but not. You can't have that emotion, or you have to learn that. I would rather have the ability to feel the music and learn technicality,
right,
instead of the other way around. Because I think it's probably easier to teach technical than it is to teach empathy.
It's kind of weird too, because like when you're teaching music, there's like the instruction usually starts with the proper way to hold the instrument, the proper way to play the instrument, all that kind of stuff. And when you just pick it up and you just start playing by feel, whatever, oftentimes all of those techniques, you don't have those, and you just play whatever I guess feels comfortable with your body type or whatever. Because when you look at like great guitarists, if you're learning to play a guitar, the classical way, you have your one leg up and you have your guitar at a specific angle, and you're holding it a specific way. But look at great guitarists like Slash or something. Mm-hmm. It's way down here. He's hunched over. Top hat, no shirt, just wailing away at the thing. But it's amazing listening to what comes off of those five or six strings.
For sure. Yeah. It is crazy. It's good. The Grateful Dead were unique in many ways, and I'll kind of wrap up with this. They were the first kind of jam band. Mm-hmm. So what happened was whenever they would play in concert, instead of ending a song, they would stretch it out to whatever became of what they were stretching it out to.
Yeah.
So they would, instead of down in the song, they would end the song. Everybody'd know that was the end that they've always practiced, but then they'd start looking around, and maybe Jerry, maybe Bob, maybe one of the pianists would start doing something, and they would give that person room to do whatever it is that they were doing.
Right.
So one night or one song, it might be the piano player, and he's just feeling it, and he's doing it, and they all fall in behind him, mm-hmm. and they go on to another song. They may have had a song list, but it was a strong indication of what they were going to play. It wasn't necessarily exactly what they were going to play.
Right.
Something may happen, and they were open. I guess the point is they were open to letting the environment guide what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, in cycling, if you're on a team, your body doesn't always feel the same as it does from race to race. Mm-hmm. Even if you're on the same training schedule, there's just times where sometimes you may not have got enough sleep or whatever, and you're just not feeling it that day. It might be your day to be the leader of that team, but the way somebody else is riding, they will know, and you will be able to see how they're riding. Well, he's got it today, man. I don't have it to climb up that last climb.
Right.
So we're going to switch. And and Don's going to be the leader today, or somebody else is going to be the leader, and I'm going to support him. If you put that ego aside, your team can do a lot better.
Right.
Same with the musicians. You know what I mean? Sometimes, if they're too high or whatever, Jerry's not feeling it for whatever. He had a lot of health problems, and if he's just not feeling it, he's just coming back from a health scare, he might not have it that day. So Bob would take over, not lead guitar, but he would take over maybe in between whenever they're stretching out to start a song.
Right.
Right. He would start his part, and then Jerry would fall in with his part. Mm-hmm. So in that way, they were very unique. And other jam bands like Fish and other bands would come along after that and kind of do the same thing. But they were the first ones to do that. And that's one of the reasons why they ended up playing 3.5 hours at night. So
that's cool.
Yeah. They also had two drummers.
Uh-huh.
Not at the beginning, but at the end or in the middle to the end, they had two drummers. And that just gave them an opportunity to have a different backbone, more traps, more bass. It just gave it a different feel, different presence to them. So in many ways, they were very unique, and they landed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I believe. I don't remember what year it was, but they were there. Jerry's was still alive, but he didn't go because he didn't appreciate that type of fame. He appreciated it, but he didn't know how to really deal with it.
Yeah.
And he never did deal with it. Even during his death, he became so popular that people, not them, not the band, but people were, what do they call it? They were apostolizing him.
Right.
They were holding him up to where he didn't want to be. He was just a guitar player, man, for one of the best rock and roll bands in the world. He didn't. Man, people are idiots. they started putting his likeness on a cross and putting that on a flag or something. You know what I mean? He saw that one time, according to Bob, he saw that one time and he said he almost got sick. He said, I can't,
we need to copyright our stuff now.
Yeah, I guess so. He said, man, that's too much.
Yeah.
That's way too much, you know? Anyway, I don't know a lot about their spirituality. There's so many of them, so many band members. They had three or four pianists. Two of them died in their 20s. But Bob Weir, I think they would say that they're spiritual. I don't think I've never heard the words "We are Jesus-loving Christians." I've never heard that, but I've heard and seen a lot of the things that they seem to hold important because it's in the background or in the foreground of their interviews. Like you see a Buddha, you might see something else that's spiritual. So I think that's where that's probably where Jerry was, before he died, and that seems to be where Bob Weir is. But really peaceful guys, you know what I mean? Real peaceful, real loving, encouraging people. Bob Weir, and I will end with this. Bob Weir ended up marrying a lady after Jerry died. He married a lady that was a friend of the band. She wasn't really a groupie. I guess you could call her a groupie, but she would. She just knew the band. She knew somebody in the band. She got to know the band from way before they got married. And after Jerry died, they ended up getting to know each other, and they got married and have two beautiful kids. And it's a great life for Bob Weir. Yeah, he made it through a lot of the drug stuff, and ended up marrying a beautiful woman, having a great family, great life right now. He ended up touching base with his blood parents because he was given up for adoption as a baby. So he's living living. I hope that he comes to Christ. You know what I mean? If you're searching and searching and searching, Christ is there. If you give him Buddha a chance, man, won't you? Maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe my prayer is that he is. But anyway, I could go on and on about the Grateful Dead. A lot of good experiences. I'm glad that I didn't get caught up in the drug culture of it, because many people did, and some of them didn't make it out of it. Yeah, that's the negative part of that subculture. But the music lives on, and I still enjoy it. I'm glad that I spent the week, swimming in the Grateful Dead again. What do you think, Josh? You ever listen to Grateful Dead?
Nowhere near the amount you have. I've heard a couple songs. I don't recognize the song that you mentioned about being your favorite.
Box of Rain.
Yeah, Box of Rain.
Let me sing it for you.
Well, no. I'll definitely look it up later. But
all right.
Yeah, I would probably recognize some of their songs, but I don't know what those songs are right now, because I wouldn't recognize them by name. Right. I'd recognize them by tune.
Right. Gotcha. All right. It's not one that you don't just hear the Grateful Dead on the top 40. You know what I mean? Later on in their career, they did break the top 40 with some of their music, but it's not something that you just kind of put on and listen to one song. You kind of listen to the whole album.
Would you say that it has a cult following, or it's like at some time it was mainstream?
No, it was cult following, and it got more mainstream. I came on board in the 80s, so it was a resurgence. I didn't know this until I started doing the research. Whenever I came on board, it was a resurgence. I was one of thousands of college students that started discovering the Grateful Dead in the 80s and 90s. Whereas when they started in the 60s, they started as a you ever heard of the acid tests?
Acid tests.
Acid tests. So when LSD was founded, it wasn't illegal because nobody knew what it was. So this group of people discovered it, and they started they realized that this psilocybin, or whatever it was, it expanded your. They said that it expanded your brain, expanded your mind. So they started doing all these tests with kids from Palo Alto, and they got a bus, and they would travel around California, and they would enter or rent or occupy these warehouses, and they invite people to the warehouses, and they would hand out Kool-Aid that was laced with LSD, and they would. I don't know what they would do. I don't know if they would write poetry or whatever it was that they would do, but they did this to try to see how it expanded your mind. The band went one time, and they realized they didn't have any music, so they approached the organizer and said, "Hey, we'll be the house band for free." So they started as acid test house band. That's how they.
All right.
That's how they got. That's how they got famous. And that was the beginning of their first stardom, their first fame, and it kind of died down a little bit. Then it came back in the 80s, heavy with some.
They're the house band for cocaine test.
Yeah. Anyway, so they came back the second time they came back. That's whenever I discovered them, and it was more college students and a little bit people with a little bit more disposable money, and that's when I came on board. And I think they had 2 or 3 studio albums that got in the top 40 and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So anyway,
interesting.
That's all I know.
Okay. What band are you gonna do next? Or are you gonna still stay on Grateful Dead for a couple weeks?
No, I think I'm not sure who I'm gonna do next. We're getting close to Queen, Donna, so I think I'm gonna. It might be Queen.
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury and his.
Now I do know more of their songs.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and say that we're going to do Queen, Freddie Mercury next.
Probably just because it's hard not to be familiar with the Queen songs.
Talking about top 40, my goodness gracious,
Right.
I think they wanted to be famous. They did. I think
Yeah,
Freddie
probably.
Mercury
Yeah.
pretty much wanted to be a front man for a band. He was made to be a front man for a band.
Right.
Freddie Mercury was. My goodness gracious. He can sing too.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to pass it on to you, Josh. What would you like to talk about today?
All right. Well, so there's this verse in Hebrews 11, that we probably all know. It says, "But without faith it is impossible to please Him. For he that cometh to God." Well, actually, let's just stop it right there, because most people, when they read this or when they encounter this verse, they only encounter that first phrase. "But without faith it is impossible to please Him." Mm-hmm. And you know my pet peeve, right?
I know, leaving out the important beginnings and afters.
Yeah, So I was talking to someone the other day. Talking commenting back and forth on their Facebook post, and he had made this observation, whatever. It was kind of like expressing disappointment because he listens to a lot of Christian music and stuff, and lately it seems like there's been a lot of people who are a lot of Christian artists who have left their faith, or who have said they no longer subscribe to that faith or whatever. And I commented back and I said, it seems like there's this trend in a lot of modern Christianity where our view of God is sort of condensed into a couple verses that we extract from the New Testament, and that's our view that's kind of our whole view of God. And then we build doctrine on that. And so when life gets difficult, or when we encounter questions about our existence or whatever, that are even just a little bit deeper than the little scratching of the surface that we do with our favorite New Testament verses or whatever, our faith often becomes inadequate. And our worldview collapses and we find ourselves doubting or even leaving our faith. And I wonder, like in those instances when those Christian artists do that, I have to think, like, if you're a popular artist, there's probably like a loneliness to that, that quote unquote normal people don't experience, right? Because you're popular in a genre, you have a lot of popularity and you're surrounded by a lot of people, but those people are surrounding you because of your popularity, not because they have any type of personal relationship with you or whatever. And so I can imagine that there's a loneliness in fame that us normal people don't experience.
Yeah.
I mean, not you and me, because we have our followers, right?
You've got tens of listeners,
right?
Man.
Yeah, but it seems like in the absence of those like meaningful friendships or whatever, where two Christians are friends and they're interested in digging in God's word and sharing that with each other. If you don't have that kind of outlet, then when you encounter difficult things, your worldview or your view of God tends to collapse. Because there's not a lot of the tree blows over because the roots are shallow.
Yeah.
And this is an example of one of those where if all you encounter of this chapter of Hebrews 11 is the first verse, it says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." And this other verse, part of a verse that says, "Without faith it's impossible to please God." Those are cool, like bumper sticker verses,
right?
But where does it actually? What does it actually mean? Like, where is the reality of it? Because the next question is, well, okay, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay, what is this? What is this faith that you're talking about? Is it just this? I believe in God, and that's faith. Yeah. When it talks about without faith, it's impossible to please Him. Okay, so am I pleasing God by the fact that I believe that He exists, or I say, yeah, I think God is real, or I have a WWJD bracelet, or cross around my neck, or something like that. Like, what does that verse actually mean? And we lose so much because we don't have. A lot of times we don't look at what's around that verse, because, like in Hebrews 11, it starts out, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for," which means because it says now faith. That's a transitional word. That means something went on in Hebrews 10, and we talked about that in a prior episode.
Yeah.
Because he talks about the foundations of faith and all that kind of stuff. And then Hebrews 11 picks up because it's the same idea. The chapter numbers don't exist. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Talking about like the heroes of the faith, quote unquote, from the Old Testament. For by faith, the faith that the elders had, it was by that they obtained a good report. Through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he, being dead, yet speaketh. So in other words, that calls back to that Old Testament story back in Genesis when Cain and Abel were called to bring a sacrifice to God. Atonement for sin requires a shedding of blood. And so Abel brought something, because Abel was a shepherd. Abel brought a sheep, and Cain brought fruits and vegetables, all that kind of stuff. But regardless, God had specifications on what sacrifice was to be brought to him. Cain didn't meet those. Abel did because of his faith. It says that by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous. So, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous. That gives us an indication the kind of sacrifice that was being addressed here was something that had to do with righteousness. It was probably an atonement sacrifice. And so, because Abel brought the right sacrifice, that was a picture of what Christ was going to one day do. By that faith, that's what was the mechanism of Abel's righteousness. And then verse 5, it says, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. And when you go back to Genesis, the early chapters of Genesis and the genealogies, I think it's Genesis 5. Because it's the lead up to the flood of Noah. It says, Abraham lived this long and he had a son, and then he lived this long and he died. And his son, Seth, lived this long and had a son, and then lived a little bit longer, and then he died. And it goes on and on, Adam, Seth, Enos, all these different genealogies from Adam all the way to Noah. And all of them except one, it said that they lived such and such years and had a son, and then they lived so such and such years, and then they died. Except when it gets to Enoch, it says Enoch walked with God and he was not. It never said he died. And the way that's interpreted is Enoch, and it says this elsewhere in Scripture as well, that Enoch didn't die. He was brought to heaven, but before his death. It says he walked with God and he was not. And this gives a little bit of commentary on that. It says, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God. So remember the verse we started with. It says, without faith, and it's the next verse, without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So there's this two-component thing to faith, right? Without faith it's impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. It's not just that we believe that God exists, but God wants relationship with us. God is a rewarder of those who seek him. And so Enoch and Abel were people that were used as an example of people who sought God. And then it goes on, by faith Noah, being warned of God of the things not yet seen, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house. Verse 8 says, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. Verse 9, by faith he sojourned in the land of promise. Verse 10, he looked for a city that had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Verse 11, through faith Sarah. Verse 12, it just goes one after one, all these different examples of faith. And it's all like a lot of times we are shown examples of where, like, I had faith in God, so this good thing happened to me. Like, almost like it's God is like paying us an hourly fee for trusting in Him, right? I have faith in God. God blessed me with $1 million. I had faith in God. God helped me pay off my house. I had faith in God. God helped me, even as a church, right? Yeah. We had faith in God. God helped us build something, or whatever. And that's not what these verses are talking about, because Abraham was a rich guy. Noah was, the richest man in the world at one point. Because
I got you.
right.
He's also the poorest man.
Right, also the poorest man in the world. But Abraham was known as a wealthy guy, but this didn't say by faith Abraham accumulated a lot of wealth, or by faith Abraham accumulated a lot of fame or power or anything like that, all of which he had. It said, by faith Abraham, when he was called out into a place which he should after receive for inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. So his faith wasn't in pursuit of like, okay, what is God going to do for me because I'm doing this for him? It wasn't that. It was my desire is to please God, which is what that verse, what that other verse said. Without faith, it is impossible to please him. And before that, it said Enoch had this testimony that he pleased God. That's the theme of these verses here is how can I please God? And it starts to give these examples. The way Noah pleased God was he didn't know what was happening in the future, but he was obeying God, and he built this ark, and this ark was the mechanism that God used to save Noah and his family. Noah didn't know, exactly what the future held, but he did know God told me to do this. God told me something was going to happen. I'm going to do it. By faith, I'm going to please God. Same with Abraham. Abraham, move. Okay, where? Just move. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know yet what the future held, but he did have faith in the one who knew the future, right? Mm-hmm. By faith, Abraham pleased God. And so, verse 13, after giving a bunch of examples, it says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. That verse isn't often read with that other verse that says, by faith it's impossible to please God. Ergo, we should have faith so we can please God. Mm-hmm. We can get stuff as a result of it, right? That's not the focus, because this says specifically, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Their belief that God is, and that God is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him, was not based in the idea that if I do those two things, I will accumulate something in this life. Mm-hmm. I'll accumulate wealth or fame or power or property or, be able to build my kingdom. It was, I'm part of something that's much larger than the small span of life that I have. And I'm acting in faith that God exists, one, but also that God rewards those who seeks him. May not be in this life, but that reward is there, and it's promised to us. He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So they confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. So take Abraham, for example. He left his homeland, Chaldea, or the Chaldees. And this says he had opportunities to go back, but Abraham was looking for something that was greater than where he came from. Just like we are. We admit that we're not part of this world. We're looking for something that's greater than the world that we live in. That's the goal that we live towards. We have faith in God. We have faith that God has something for us, whether in this life or the next, and we live out that faith. So it's not about if I, put $10 on an offering plate, I expect 100 to return because God's going to bless me.
Right.
It's not, I'm not expecting that kind of return. It's not, I'm going to, profess my faith in God because I expect if I do that He'll help me, pay off my mortgage or be successful in business or whatever. That stuff all may come, but that's not the goal of our faith in God. Our faith in God is because we know that anything that happens in this life is temporary, and we seek. This is our Ur of Chaldees. This life, we're living not for this life, but for the destination we have afterwards. Just like Abraham did, we're living because we know that God exists and He rewards those who seek Him. That ultimate reward is being in His presence for all of eternity when we die, and so. Just like Abraham and Sarah and Enoch and Abel and all these guys that are given in chapter 11, we seek something beyond this physical universe, and that's what our faith should orient us towards, and we should be looking at life in light of that faith, because ultimately our existence here ends. And although, as we walk through this life, we have all these opportunities to live in sin. We have all these opportunities to return to the focus of this world. Our faith directs our attention to something a lot more important. And so as this chapter goes through all those examples, and even more, because he talks about Isaac, Joseph, Moses, different judges like Gideon, Jephthah, Samuel, all these different things. After doing that whole list, the next chapter starts up and says, "Wherefore, seeing we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God." And so the cool thing about that passage, before he went through that whole list of 11, in chapter 11, he mentioned, like in the Old Testament, large decisions, like judicial decisions, like someone's being tried for a capital punishment or whatever. It said, that could happen in the presence of two witnesses. And then he says, now look at all these different people that lived in faith. Way more than two witnesses. Chapter 12 says, now seeing as how we're compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Let's look to Jesus. Let's look to Jesus, right? We're living so that we are, or our ultimate goal is to please God. And we do that following the example of these people in the Old Testament. And we do that knowing that we're compassed about with all of them as witnesses to our deeds. So knowing that, knowing that each one of them had opportunities to go back to the lives that they left, why are we always going back to the sin that we left? Why aren't we looking forward to what God has for us, looking forward to the opportunities we have to serve God, to further His kingdom, and to be part of that kingdom? And I think once we have that view in mind, this verse in Hebrews 11 that says, without faith is impossible to please Him, I think that starts to come into a little bit better focus when you look at it in that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Looking at it from a heavenly perspective.
Right.
I've heard people that I've come in contact with in the faith community come right out and say, I do these things in order to get the blessings from God. Mm-hmm. And when I first heard somebody say that, I continued the conversation, and he said it again, and I did. It wasn't a place where I felt comfortable communicating with him how I thought that was an error.
Right.
But he was truly it was as if it was a part of his doctrine. Mm-hmm. I did this for these people. That's how I get my blessings.
Right.
Those are his words. I thought, man, that just doesn't even sound right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's that verse in Scripture that says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. We're often exposed to that verse as a mechanism of, like, if you want to have the best life you can in this world, if you want to, have a lot of money, have a lot of power, have a lot of whatever, success, however you want to define it, then seek ye first the kingdom of God. Mm-hmm. And that's totally turned that thing on its head, because, the Bible says you're not seeking the kingdom of God so that you can have earthly success. Mm-hmm. You're seeking the kingdom of God because that's what's going to last. Mm-hmm. This earth is going to pass away. Even Solomon, when he was a kid, when faced with the huge responsibility of being king one day, God offered Solomon an opportunity. He says, "Ask me for whatever you want." And Solomon said, "It's a huge thing to judge your people. Give me wisdom." And God said, "You know what? You could have asked for anything, mm-hmm. but because you asked for," he's like, "I'm going to give you wisdom." And we see that throughout Solomon's life. Mm-hmm. He says, "I'm going to give you wisdom, but you could have asked for wealth. You could have asked for victory over all of your enemies. You could have asked for anything, but because you put all that stuff aside and you prioritize wisdom and your relationship with me, mm-hmm. I'm going to give you all that stuff."
Wow. Mm.
And so that's really the model, because Solomon didn't say, "I want all this stuff, so I'm going to ask for wisdom." Mm-hmm. No, he didn't even care about all this stuff. He said, "I'm going to ask for wisdom so that I can do the job you've given me the best I can."
Right.
And God said, "Cool." Mm. Because you did that, all these other things,
That's
because
cool.
you sought my kingdom first,
right?
All these other things will be added to you.
Josh, I guess God gave me this experience to share. And I've shared it many times in classes I was teaching or participating in. I was getting at a gas pump one day, and I asked for $20, something like that. Went in and paid. Went up and pumped. Well, my tank wouldn't hold 20; it would hold 15. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting here with $5 worth of gas that I can't pump in, and a guy just happened to pull up on the other side of the pump. I said, "Hey, friend, would you like $5 of free gas? Because I can't put it in my tank." He looked at me, took the handle, put it in his tank, leaned up against his car, started pumping it, and just kind of stared at me. Didn't say a word. He didn't say not one word to me. Uh-huh. And I just got in my car and drove off, and I thought, okay, that was odd, but now why did I do this? Did I do this to get a thank you?
Right.
Or did I do it just because that was the right thing to do? Or did I do it because I didn't have any other choice? Why did I? And it started me thinking, why do we do anything?
Right.
Why do we send a birthday present? Mm-hmm. So if I'm sending a birthday present, should I expect a thank you card? If I send a Christmas card, or if I send a whatever, should I expect something back? Should I expect at least an acknowledgement of that? And I don't have an answer for that, but I guess God put me in that situation to ask myself all these questions. Why did I do that? I wasn't really offended either. I just the way he kind of looked at me, and
there was no closure.
It was just odd. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it was weird enough where it stuck with me and started asking me. I started asking myself these other questions. So maybe that's why he gave me that. But it was weird. The guy just looked at me. He leaned up against, like, oh well, I was expecting somebody to give me $5.
Right.
Whatever. Okay. there's no reason for me
I'm
to
doing
get
you a
upset.
favor.
Yeah, there's no reason for me to get upset about.
He's like,
that.
why didn't he thank me?
But I don't expect people to acknowledge a birthday present,
Right.
even a card. I've never have, but I know that there are people that do.
Right.
And depending on if you get that acknowledgement will depend on heavily if they send another birthday.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm right, wrong, indifferent. I guess it's just the way we were grown up. We were growed up. Yeah, that's the right way of saying that.
It's like that Seinfeld episode where George buys paid for the big salad, and the other girl handed it to Elaine.
That's right.
And Elaine thanked the other girl. No,
I bought the big salad.
I bought the salad.
You know, not a big deal, but I bought the salad. That's right. My life's a big Seinfeld episode. Anyway, all right, Josh. Thanks for that lesson today. I think it's a good way of looking at that, looking at it from the heavenly point of view instead of an earthly point of view. Appreciate it. Next week I'll talk about Queen. Donna, I love you. And I guess we'll see each other next week, won't we?
I think so.
Are you going to be able to make it, Chris, you think?
I'm surviving.
Okay. All right. Y'all, we love you. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next week.